Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar today. Apologies for the slightly delayed start. We're just having a few technical difficulties and we're still waiting on trying to get one of our panelists in, but hopefully Mark will be able to join us shortly. So today is all about student placements and making the most of a student placement, both as the host organisation and as the student preparing to take on a project as part of the placement. So the Data Lab Academy Masters Programme supports about 100 MSc students every year on data and AI focused courses across Scotland, across various universities and various different courses, everything from an MSc in artificial intelligence through MScs in data science, some with a focus on policy and policy making, others that are more business focused, so really varied. As part of that program, we offer a program of activities to support with studies, everything from employability, CV reviews, interview tips, extra webinars, technical webinars through our community here at the Data Lab, and then also the opportunity to apply for a placement. We're looking for about 8 to 12 week placements, which are defined projects that can potentially form the basis of a research dissertation, generally taking place over summer. So today we're joined by a panel. We've got Erica Belcher from Scottish Government and Alvaro Janda from Tesco Bank, who are both hosts. So we'll talk about it from the organisational side of things. And then we've got Oliver Schmidkowski and hopefully Mark Stephen joining us shortly, who joined their teams and can give us the student view. So I'll just hand over to the panel to introduce themselves before we get going. So Erica, I'll pass over to you.
Hi everyone, I'm Erica and I'm a senior data analyst in the Scottish Government's Cloud Platform Service team, and I've been in that team for about a year and a half now, and in the civil service for slightly longer, for about 3 years.
Great, thanks Erica. Alvaro, I'll hand on to you.
Yeah, right now I work at Tesco Bank. I've been at Tesco Bank over 5 years. My role at Tesco Bank is a lead data scientist within the analytics department, where we try to develop models to help the business to do pricing scenarios. So yeah, that's me.
Great. And Oliver?
Hi, so I'm a student data analyst working for the Cloud Platform Service team at Scottish Government. Eric as my line manager. And I got involved in the placement through the Data Lab as part of my master's course in IT with Business Intelligence at Robert Gordon University. And initially it was supposed to be a 3-month placement, and I'm still here. So.
Great news, great news. Mark, are you in now? Oh, yes, you are. Hello.
Yes, I've had to join with my phone. Sorry, there's something wrong with my laptop. So.
Sorry, yeah, we're just doing quick intros, so just I just know a bit about yourself.
So yeah, I was a student at Abertay doing a master's in fintech, and I did a placement at Tesco Bank with Alvaro.
Great. Well, thanks very much to you all for joining. So Erica, I'll start with you. So it was your first year being involved. How did you hear about the program, and what kind of made you want to get involved?
Yeah, so I and a colleague of mine saw the programme advertised through like an internal newsletter at the Scottish Government, and we heard about that just before the deadline, the March deadline. So we needed to decide quite quickly if it was suitable for us or not, and if it was an opportunity we wanted to go for. But fortunately, there's quite a long-standing relationship between the Scottish Government and Data Lab, so we was able to speak to other internal colleagues like Gerard to get some advice and understand a bit more about whether it would be a suitable opportunity. So it was really helpful. We decided it was something we wanted to go for, partly because I'm the only data analyst on the team at the moment, and I really wanted the opportunity to collaborate with someone else and to share ideas, and particularly from someone who'd be studying at the same time, who'd have that fresh perspective. So yeah, it was a pretty quick decision, but it was a fairly straightforward one to make. And yeah, that's hopefully given a bit of insight into our initial thought process behind that.
Definitely. And in terms of kind of hearing about the program, was there a project or an idea of something to work on that instantly popped up, or was that something that you needed to think about and scope out a bit more?
Yeah, so that's a good question. We're a fairly new service in the Scottish Government, so we're the cloud platform team, and I think it's been in the works for about 2 years now. And when I joined the team, I was assigned to a specific project called FinOps, which is a new service that's being developed. So it was quite clear from the onset that any additional support could support that project and the creation of this new, what's called FinOps service. It's basically a project that's trying to make more sense of cloud cost and usage data. So that project scope was quite clear from the get-go, because a lot of work needed doing to develop that new service. But as a service in general, there's a lot that needs to be developed as part of the roadmap. So we had quite a clear, I guess we had quite a clear picture of what needed doing, and that made it easier to decide how that new member of the team could fit into things.
Great. Okay, so you kind of had a team roadmap, and you could use that to then pull out a project which would make sense for someone to get involved.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Great. Okay. And Alvaro, I'll come to you now. You've obviously been involved with the program quite a lot. Tesco Bank have been a regular partner and host organisation over the past 4 years since I've been at the Data Lab. Anyway, what keeps bringing you back to the placement program?
I guess that for one side is, let's say, the value on doing this kind of internships for the business, for us, for Tesco Bank, because it's with the opportunity to have innovation in a little more lower risk environment in that sense, and also the learning opportunities that we have. More specific to the Data Lab program, I think that, as you said, we have been involved, let's say, Tesco Bank over a few years now, and we have seen how the program has been improved. So we have found that it's a very good program in terms of finding good candidates for the projects that you have, that they may have the right skills and they have the right motivation in that sense. So that is one of the things that, particularly for the Data Lab program, I think that works well on top of, let's say, the benefits or that we see on doing these internships for the business.
Amazing. And in terms of having that experience, how do you go about thinking about projects internally? How do you select them for kind of submission?
Yeah, so internally we developed a few years ago kind of opportunity canvas that we call, that is like one slide in PowerPoint, where each person that may have an idea for a project needs to fill in, okay, what is the kind of idea or the problem they need to solve? What is the kind of data they have to support the problem? What is the hypothesis that they have, the business value, the customer value that they could have? So that is a way for anyone, let's say, in the department to try to be able to submit a proposal of a project, so that at the very end we get quite a few proposals. But with that opportunity canvas, you put a framework that people start thinking on whether it's feasible and what are the benefits of each project. And after that, typically what happens is that each person has the opportunity to pitch their project to a more senior member of the department, so maybe the head of data science, or maybe one of the data science managers, and then between them they try to decide, okay, which are the projects that we think that they are the right ones, thinking on the business and also on the feasibility, whether it's feasible, because you don't want to have projects that at the end they're going to be feasible for the student to carry out.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that's a good point in terms of thinking about feasibility. Are there particular things that you think work really well for a student project in terms of that feasibility, or the kind of type of project that you think works well?
Typically, on my experience of the projects that had been co-supervising, typically was what worked well if it was more a kind of exploration project. So something that is a little more like no a specific thing to do. You have a scope, you have something that you want to work out, but there is some kind of room for exploration. So in that case, you can assess on that initial part of the project as well, okay, what are the things that they might be more feasible or less feasible, so that as the project evolves, you focus more on what is feasible to be done for the student. But of course, as I said, one of the first steps when we submit an idea for feasibility is try to think, okay, what is the product that you have? Do you have the data? You have to do it yourself. Do you think that you have the data and the resources to be able to do it? And what is the kind of hypothesis that you have? That helps as well to that person that is submitting a project proposal to do that initial screening on, okay, is this feasible or not? And helping on that.
Yeah, basically, I think that's really good advice, kind of thinking about when you're thinking about feasibility, do you have the data there ready to go? What's kind of your hypothesis? And then, as you say, leaving that room for kind of exploration, and obstacles will crop up, obviously. So being flexible in those terms as well. Erica, just to come back to you, how does that kind of chime with your experience, and having done it once, kind of what do you think for kind of future iterations you would?
Yeah, I think it was really interesting to hear how a different organization approaches it. And I think there are some similarities there in that when we were writing the project proposal, we weren't entirely sure where that project would be at the point of that student starting, because we weren't sure. There are a few things that we were progressing at the time that might have impacted the exact kind of tasks that that project needed doing. So we basically tried to keep it fairly open. So whilst we drew the parameters around what that project required, we tried to give a few options as to what else could be done within that. So I think a bit like Alvaro, we tried to allow enough room for that student to input their own ideas and expertise and experience and their own style of working as well. So yeah, it was I think it worked quite well for us. I think we gave like 4 or 5 options in the scope and in the application itself, which allowed that student to choose. So yeah, I think, we similarly tried to keep it general enough, but also fairly specific so that there was some contained parameters around what the student would be working on.
Yeah, I think, that's a really good tip, I think, for organizations submitting projects in terms of having a defined direction of travel, but then that kind of flexibility within that. I think that's really important. Great. Well, thanks very much. I'll now head over to the students to get their perspective. So, Mark, from your side of things, what made you? Did you know you wanted to do a placement coming in? Like, what attracted you to the program? Oh, you're on mute, I think.
Sorry, I think, can you hear me now?
Yes, can hear you now.
Yeah. So yeah, I knew from the start that I wanted to do a placement. I think when you're doing an applied course like fintech, it can be quite difficult. Partly it's quite difficult to think of what you want to do, but it's also difficult to get access to enough data. A lot of data in finance is either private or it's behind a paywall. So I knew I wanted to go into an organization where there'd be data there, it would take the pressure off.
Great. Yes. Yeah, that's really good. And in terms of the application process, how did that work?
The application process was pretty straightforward. There was plenty advertised on the data lab website, and it was just a case of making shortlists, looking at what's appropriate, what projects were relevant, what was interesting, and then just applying and waiting for I got quite lucky in that I think it was the second interview I had. I got accepted.
Great. Well, amazing. Obviously interviewed well. What drew you to the projects that you applied to? I suppose doing fintech, you were kind of leaning towards the financial sector. Is that?
It was also the project we did was on elasticity, which is an economic concept, and my undergrad was in economics, so I felt quite comfortable going in that it was something I'd studied before. I've kind of felt more prepared for that than some of the other projects were things that I'd never heard of before. So
okay, so having that level of familiarity to kind of help whilst you developed other skills kind of appealed.
Yeah,
great,
definitely.
Brilliant. And Oliver, I think you were in a slightly different position, weren't you? Because you were working at the time and trying to get a project going at your workplace. Is that?
Yeah, that's right. So at the time I was studying and I was working part-time at the NHS, and I knew I wanted to do a placement for my thesis that I had to do throughout the summer, because I didn't have an innovative idea for my project from the uni side of things. So I knew that what I do for the placement, I would want to do alongside my uni project as well. And what drew me to the data lab placements was how, first of all, how nicely everything was laid out. You know, we had the rounds of placements set up through the platform, and it was really clear as to when certain applications are happening, and the project pages were laid out in a simple manner, and I knew who I could turn to for any support I needed. So I knew I could contact yourself or any of the data lab students for any support. And what sort of got me over the line, essentially, of because I was at a position where I could either choose to stay on at my previous employment or end up with a data lab placement. And what got me to the data lab placement, I think, was just that it was more relevant, really, with my course, because it was a more business intelligence focused course. So having the opportunity to do data visualization with Erica's team was really closely aligned to what I was doing. Especially that a lot of the other placements were just not in my area specifically, not in my area of expertise. And also the placements for the data lab are paid. So that's also a really big factor for me.
Yeah, that's very, very important, definitely. And I think sort of looking at some of the questions that are coming through on the chat as well, we do have a project scoping guide that can help host organizations when they're thinking about designing a project for submitting, which has a lot of information. But generally, we kind of look to the host organization to drive what the projects will be. So we have a really varied cohort of students and courses that we support. So as I was saying, everything from artificial intelligence and big data technologies through data science, and then more business focused fintech, as we've heard from Mark, and policy making courses as well. So there's a huge variety there, but also then within the student body, there's a huge variety. So we have students who've come straight from their undergrads, and we have students who are in some cases making career changes or returning to work, other students that have kind of quite long-standing professional experience, some in technical areas. So we can really support a huge variety of projects. Everything from kind of NLP and computer vision on the one side through more visualizations and kind of business focused and dashboarding kind of stuff. And then in the middle, your more data science, kind of ML, designing models, anomaly detection, using time series data. So we really work with you on kind of the data that you have and what you would like to do with it. So that's definitely something, if you're interested in hosting and you haven't done it before, or even if you have and would like to talk through ideas, please get in touch with us and the BD team, and we're happy to have a conversation around your ideas and how it might work. Just to come back to you, Mark and Oliver, so obviously there were the projects that really appealed to you, but in general, what do you kind of think makes for an interesting, well, I guess project description, I suppose. So when you're looking at the boards and you have all the projects there, what kind of made things stand out? Mark, I'll come to you on that.
Yeah. Well, I was, in my case, because I was doing fintech, I was really looking for access to financial data and interesting financial projects. And the Tesco project was looking at demand for credit card products. So that was something, demand forecasting is something I'm quite interested in. And, getting access to real bank data was something that interested me. So that was probably the main thing that drew me in.
Great. Okay. And in terms of kind of the way the project was described, if you're talking to a host organization submitting a proposal, were there things in there, I don't know, around support or kind of
it
that
was
really
more,
appealed?
I think the main thing was it was well described and it was clear what data was available. And that was one thing that I was thinking about was sometimes it's very difficult, when you're with a database project, you need to have the right data source. That's almost like it's foundational. And that's something that stood out to me is that the data was well explained. It was clear, what was available. And I thought, this is something I can really get my teeth into.
Amazing. That's, yeah, really, really great tip. So yeah, thanks for that. And Oliver, from your side, what would you say?
I would kind of mostly second what Marcus said in terms of the project descriptions being really detailed. I much preferred seeing the projects which were clearly described and sort of let me know in advance what to expect, that they expect from me, essentially. And especially Erica's project stood out to me because that one was the only one I think that I remember seeing multiple options for. So that was also quite unique there, where they opened up their possibilities of what can be worked on in the team, and already showed me that even if I do finish the one project, I have more to get my teeth stuck into, essentially. But generally, yeah, I like when the project descriptions are detailed and help you know what to expect.
Great. Yeah, I think that is really important, something we try and get across when speaking to potential host organizations, in terms of really clarifying what's expected from the student, and then as Mark was saying, kind of digging into that data. So kind of moving from the kind of project submission side of things, Erica, how did the kind of recruitment process itself go from that project submission?
Yeah, so I guess there's two aspects to the recruitment. There was the interviewing process, and then there was the onboarding process. And for the civil service, there's quite a kind of, I guess they have quite a clear process when it comes to recruitment that's used regardless of the job role being applied for, and that's to make the entrance or the entryway into the civil service as fair and unbiased as possible. So whilst the student placement wasn't necessary to use those formal recruitment practices because of it being a student placement, we still tried to stick as closely as we could to them. So we used the format that was given to us, and that there's a lot of information for in the civil service. So that involves kind of testing against different behaviours, basically. So from the job advert that we'd created, or the project scope that we'd created, we looked at what behaviours we were looking for, essentially what skills, and then for each of those skills we wrote a question, and we asked the same set of questions to all the students being interviewed, and we interviewed 3 students in total. And we'd been given those students' names from yourself, Max, pretty quickly, actually, after we'd uploaded that project scope to the system. So I'd say, yeah, that was a pretty smooth process, because we had a lot of information already at our disposal as to how we should recruit and what steps we should take. And then once we'd conducted that recruitment round, and once we'd selected Oliver, we then went through the onboarding process, which is a little bit trickier in the civil service because it can be quite long, and it takes a lot of time. And the window of opportunity for that placement was slightly narrower than the usual kind of window of opportunity when you're moving jobs. So I think there were delays there that led to Oliver having to then do his project and write his thesis at the same time. And I think it's hard to know exactly, and it's hard to pinpoint exactly what caused those delays, but I think in future now there's a really good network of us within the Scottish Government who have all managed student placements, so we're able to share knowledge and information a bit quicker, and hopefully we can minimise the impact of any delays in the future. But during that process, we were slightly at the whim of the civil service kind of HR machine, and that can be hard to navigate at the best of times.
Yes, yeah, definitely feel for you on that basis. Just coming back to kind of that interview process and thinking about the type of skills and designing questions for them. Did that involve technical skills and technical knowledge?
I'm just thinking now. I think we did. We were asking with the questions themselves, we had some follow-up questions as well. So we were able to probe into some of the kind of technical skills and experience, whilst keeping in mind that we are recruiting for a student placement at the end of the day. So we weren't expecting anyone to have like expert level proficiency in the tools and systems that we use. But yeah, we wanted to get a feel for what experience the students had, as well as what their interests were, because whilst the student was choosing the placement, it's a two-way kind of process. So we wanted to ensure that there was genuine interest there as well, because that student would need to work quite independently on the project. So yeah, we were looking for some technical skills and ability, but we weren't looking for an expert level because of the role that was being recruited for.
Yeah, absolutely. That's and it's definitely something we're very clear about at the Data Lab, that this project is part of the masters. So the idea is that it forms the basis of the research dissertation, and it's still part of their learning. So they will come with skills, but it's also part of their learning. So to be aware of that. So yeah.
Exactly. And I think we were looking for that like aptitude to learn as well, that like interest and willingness to learn on the job too. So that was something we were looking for at the interview.
Amazing. And Alvaro, how does that chime with Tesco Bank? And have you changed the process over the years that you've kind of been involved?
Has changed, but slightly. So I mean, there is quite a lot of overlap with what Erika has described on there. One of the things that just that on Tesco Bank was that more kind of relaxed or simplify, let's say, the process. So we didn't follow the full, let's say, kind of process like for other roles that it will be like, for a student placement role. So in our case, it was more like a kind of motivational interview on a chat. So we try to keep it like quite informal, like having a chat in order to find out things like what Erika mentioned there. What is the motivation from the student, whether it's really motivated for the kind of the project, whether, let's say, it's a good fit for the project, and we are a good fit for them as well in terms of that. And also on the technical side of things, we will ask some questions, not to find out, let's say, like technical exercises or nothing like that, or tricky questions. It will be just to see, okay, what is the background, what is the thing that they have done? Because as you said, there's people that is still in development, because it's people that they are on the master students, so you expect that they are not going to be, let's say, experts in anything, but you can find out from their experience or what they have tried or how they approach the learning, and to overcome some of the issues that they might find, whether they are going to be a good fit for the parent node. So there are quite a lot of similarities with Erika said in there. And at the end, for me, is strike the balance and having enough technical skills, also the right motivation for the project, and the attitude. So I think that those are the three pillars for me.
Excellent. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I really think kind of having that motivation and demonstrating it, it shows that you'll be able to kind of deal with challenges as they arise and kind of work around them. So yeah, that's great. Oliver, from your side, how did you prepare for the application process?
It was really a mix of a lot of experiences that I've had throughout the education experience, really. So it was partly having already had interview and job experience, but I'm aware that not everyone would have had job experience by that point. So what I would say is there's always some avenue to learning to how to do these sort of applications. So, for example, in academy, I had a careers advisor. My uni had a whole careers department that would host lectures and events relating to employability, CV writing skills and interview skills. And I think that's also really relevant to an application for a student placement like this as well. And in general, I would say to not be like afraid to reach out for help, because there's always going to be someone out there that can support you. And even the data lab has supported me through the application process, because we had when we had the beginning event for the data lab last year, you had a panel of previous students and that were bringing in insights and how to handle things like application processes and employability. And also the Data Lab had a CV workshop that I did, and that was a big help actually in sort of refreshing some of those skills and helping me apply the best I could to the placements.
Great. Yeah. Well, glad you found the CV workshop useful. As we develop that. Mark, coming to you in terms of for students in the room, what are your kind of top tips when applying and particularly kind of preparing for that interview stage, I suppose?
Yeah, so like Oliver, I had the advantage that I'd worked before. So I'd worked in the science sector and I'd had to go through what Erica described, the much more technical, really focused questions. So I would say these interviews are quite laid back. They're not scary interviews. The main thing I would say is read the placement details very carefully. Make sure you know the details of the placement and maybe have some questions prepared. And I usually would try to figure out, because there's always something else you can know about the placement, a little bit more information that's useful to have, especially if you get the placement.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's definitely key to preparing for any interview, but kind of doing that reading around the role and kind of knowing what the project is inside out. I think that's really, really important. So Erica, you'd already touched on kind of the onboarding issues. Alvaro, in terms of Tesco Bank, what's kind of the process? Have you streamlined the process having worked through it? What would be your tips for other host organizations in going from kind of offers accepted through to actually getting someone started on the project?
Yeah, I think that the part of the onboarding, like another big organization that follows like based on this process, the HR process, on that case, so that process, I mean, is the same as for any other, let's say, employee of Tesco Bank, so that doesn't change. What, yes, that we have, let's say, kind of improve over the years. I think that is that first week when the students are starting, on how we make sure that on that week they get everything that they need in order to start the project and to be able to work on the project in an efficient way. So that means like making sure that they have access to their laptops, to the development environment, to the tools that they are going to use, whether that's Jira, Confluence, or Studio Python, or whatever. So just to make sure that they will have all the tools and then try to make them the access to the data they are going to use so that they can start doing. So I think that is the part that I think that we have improved over the years, that on that first week, to make sure that that week that okay, the student has everything in order to work on the project by the end of that first week.
Yeah, I think that's really important in terms of it's always those little hiccups. You can't access the data and you have to go through extra vetting or what have you. So making sure that's all sorted before someone arrives, and in the first week they can hit the ground running. So that's, yeah, really, really good tips there. And in terms of for students, once they've kind of, obviously they're still working on their course and they've got exams and stuff, so we don't expect too much from them. But in that preparation, that period leading up to the project start, are there useful things to be doing? I'll come back to you, Alvaro.
Yeah, so yeah, typically, yeah, will be so on that leading process, as I think that Mark touched there. So everything that you can learn before you are starting, that is something that you already gain and that you will make your project much easier. So that way, based on the details that you have from the project, you can start working on that. Or for example, if you know that you're going to be working, in our case it was with R, and you might not have much experience with R because you have more with Python, if you start doing some courses on R or start looking at that, that will be really useful. On some of the cases, we might share some papers or articles that we think that they might be useful, or some useful resources with the student, and there's not obligation for them to look at those because they have not started the project, but it's just a way of, okay, you have time and you want to have a look at that, that always will be helpful for the project, so that you get, let's say, with something already gain on that case when you're starting the project to make smoother everything.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Erica, from your side, I know you touched on the onboarding issues. I don't know if there was anything necessarily there that you could have done, but were there other things that maybe that you wish you would have done, having done it for the first time now?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I actually really like Alvaro's point on sending resources. I don't think that's something I did ahead of time, but Oliver did do a lot of preparation himself. So I guess I perhaps took it for granted that the student would prepare as sufficiently as Oliver did. So maybe next time around, I would share a list of resources and materials just in case that student needed a bit of help and guidance. So I think that's a really good tip, and that's certainly one I take away and use next time. I think also perhaps, yeah, providing a slightly more concrete onboarding, concrete like onboarding process once that student had joined. We have a lot of processes for like permanent employees, a lot of training, a lot of mandatory training, none of which really applies to a student placement. So that again might present an opportunity to provide a bit of guidance on some short training or reading that student could do beyond just the more procedural steps that they need to take in terms of logging into Jira and getting their accounts set up and things like that. So yeah, I think maybe next time around I'd give a bit more guidance around that kind of subject matter reading and training that student could do, because they might not always be at the same level.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a really good idea and a really good tip. So also as part of the kind of preparation process, we ask students' academic advisors as part of their dissertation to organise a kickoff meeting involving the student and the host organisation and getting that going. And in terms of academic supervisor support throughout, just come to Oliver, how did that work? And what would be your tips in terms of kind of managing working in a workplace with your dissertation and that kind of element as well?
Yeah, so I guess the thing I would always ultimately keep in mind for students doing a thesis and having an academic supervisor is the fact that the project is led by you as the student, right? So they're not gonna the supervisor doesn't want to push you towards in a certain direction because they're looking for that independence from you and that engagement on they're relying on the fact that you will be doing your own research on the topic, because I mean you would likely be wanting to be doing that anyway, because a thesis is a huge project. But something I would say is that kickoff meeting was fantastic between having Erica there and my academic supervisor. Bringing the two worlds together was really handy, because yeah, the academic supervisor and the sort of professional placement supervisor are two very different worlds, and you as the student essentially act as the middleman between them. So I would keep in mind always being as communicative as possible, getting everyone on the same page and letting them know what you know and what stage of the project you're at, and whatever questions I had, for instance, to my academic supervisor, I would also put through to Erica just in case she could support in any way, and vice versa. And through that, essentially, like I say, everyone was on the same level and on the same page, knowing what stage I'm at. So I would focus on that really throughout the journey, is trying to be highly communicative and keep everything on the same page, because I think it would be more stress than it's worth having to also consciously think about managing what anybody knows about you and your project. So keeping everything at the same level is for sure really important.
Yeah, definitely. I think having really open communication and kind of regular communication throughout the project, I think that's really, well, I mean, as we say, from the kickoff meeting all the way through, that's a really good way of making sure everyone's on the same page and knows what's going on. And if hiccups arise, then that's everyone's able to kind of chip in and deal with it. So yeah, really, really useful. So I kind of would like to hear a little bit more about the actual projects that you guys worked on and how that entire experience was of kind of joining, what the challenges were. So Mark, it'd be great to hear a bit more. I think you've touched on what the project was, but kind of your work on it and what the outcomes were.
Yeah, so my project was essentially trying to predict demand for credit card products, and especially the demand when you've got a range of products. And it's kind of like, if you change the conditions on one product, how does that affect demand for the other product? So it went pretty well. I think it was really interesting. We did manage to have a couple of findings at the end, which is obviously very, very useful. We found that most of the data we had was involving sort of high interest rate situations, and we found out in those cases that people prefer to turn to like balance transfer cards. So it turned out pretty well. I managed to get quite a good grade in my dissertation at the end of it. So that's always nice.
Yeah, amazing. That's a great outcome. And so in terms of that, did you create a report internally then in terms of your findings, or was it a visualization or a model that you built that?
What we essentially ended up doing was, I don't know if we built a model. It was basically mostly econometrics that I was doing. So I prepared obviously my dissertation, and I also prepared all the students in the Tesco Bank placements prepared a presentation which we delivered to members of the department. So I think I did my dissertation first, so I did my large report, and then I used that as a way to help me try to come up with a presentation that was aimed at a more general audience.
Yeah, great. Okay, brilliant. That's a great outcome. And were there any unexpected hiccups or challenges that arose that you had to deal with?
Nothing major, no. I think the thing with the master's project is it's a marathon, not a sprint. So it's just a case of making gradual progress. Like Oliver was saying, you speak to everyone involved. If there's any sort of hiccups, or if you're not sure about something, you kind of try and fine tune as you're going.
Yes, yeah, really, really good tip there. Definitely keep iterating as you're going. And Oliver, yeah, can we hear a bit more about your project and your placement and how that went?
Yeah, absolutely. So the whole project itself, it was a thesis, but it required a practical element to be produced as part of that. And where that practical element came from was the placement with Erica, and eventually the outcome was a data visualization page for customers to be able to go in and see more in-depth data on their cloud spend than they usually would be able to see. And I would second what Mark was saying about fine-tuning the project, because it was for me a complicated situation where the uni side of the project started already, but I hadn't actually been onboarded yet to the placement. So I couldn't work with the data yet. So data access was kind of an issue for me, but how I worked around it
How
was...
did you manage that?
Yeah, so I just I focused on the other parts of the thesis first, essentially. So because I still needed to write a literature review and a methodology section and develop those parts. And through that, through doing those sort of theoretical sections, I then had a body of knowledge ready for the placement once the placement actually started. So thanks to the literature review, I was able to shower Erica with a bunch of questions on day one. and that sort of helped me work through things. And also project scoping had to be tweaked because of the specific scenario we were in, because we work with two very different cloud providers at the workplace. So it was a case of having meetings with my academic supervisor to see what scope the uni is looking for, and then relaying that information with Erica and deciding what a sensible scope is for the duration of the thesis, really. So we fine-tuned as we went. iterated on the project outcomes, and all in all, yeah, I produced a visualization with 3 pages, which is in a progress of being rolled out to customers now. And the thesis went really successful. The uni side, yeah, they were really happy because we did like a presentation at uni as well of the practical aspects, and they were really happy with what they saw. And I'm constantly iterating on those dashboards and visualizations now. So
yeah, and you secured a job as well. So amazing, great all round. Erica, from your side, in terms of how the project went, were there any kind of challenges or things you'd be better prepared for next time? Any top tips for?
I'd actually say it's a pretty smooth process, I think. Like all in all, obviously there are challenges with navigating some of the internal processes, but I'd say like as an organization, I found Data Lab pretty easy to get in touch with and very approachable. Like I think you and I had a couple of calls at the beginning just when I had questions and could talk through some of those answers. So yeah, I think it's actually been a pretty pleasant experience. And quite easy to navigate as well. And I think the contribution that a student can provide to the team is really high. Like they do bring quite a fresh perspective, and it's nice to have someone who can contribute those ideas. Yeah, so I think all in all, it's been a pretty positive experience. I'd say the actual amount of effort required is quite low compared to the kind of value that you get. So I'd recommend it. I know the question wasn't necessarily if I'd recommend it or not, but
no, that's great.
Yeah, that's my takeaway.
You can definitely come back for the next webinar. In terms of,
I'm not being paid to say any of this, by the way. It's my honest opinion.
In terms of the kind of the outputs that Oliver produced, was that in line with what you were expecting, or yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's even higher. Like we have quite a lot of business challenges that we're trying to work through. There's quite a lot of expectations on the team, and I'd say that the contributions that Oliver made are able to be used and shared with customers. So in that sense, they're of a very high quality, sufficient enough to be shared more widely. So yeah, I think it's a really positive contribution. I don't think like the contribution of a student shouldn't be to fill like a business gap or a skills gap. But I think in Oliver's situation, it demonstrates how it can add value and enhance like the knowledge of the team and add a new perspective.
Amazing. That's great. And Alvaro, from your side, I mean, you've done it several times. Was it kind of in line with expectations this time round? Were there any top tips, I suppose, from your kind of years of experience that you would give out in terms of actually having a student on board?
Yeah, I think that the outputs and everything was in line with expectations. So in that sense, I think that it was really good. I would like things that Erica said on the contribution that the students can do, because they have that first pair of eyes. What I said, the good sign of an internship is you have learned something from that internship or something new. And in many cases, that's the case. And in the case with the internship with Mark, that was the case. We learned something as well. So because it was something new. So in that sense, yes, all the outputs, they are as expected. In terms of tips, I think that is something that you touched there before, Max, that it was on having clear from the beginning what is the kind of the expected outputs, and then having that flexibility depending on how the project goes, on how to adapt that bit. So that if at the very beginning expectations are very clear, so it makes life easier, and at the very end, let's say the outputs normally they will be in line with those expectations, and you can always have that kind of flexibility depending on the discoveries that you have on the project. It's a data project, and many times you know what you start, but you don't know where you're going to finish, because the data will tell you where it's going to finish.
Yeah, definitely. It's good to remember that. Amazing. Well, so now I'll kind of open up to a quick Q&A. I can see a couple of questions which I'll come to, but if anyone else has questions, please write them in the chat. Not the Q&A function. So if you just write them in the chat, and then we'll try and get around to them. In terms of how students sign up for the placement, so the placement program is closed to the students that are part of the Data Lab Data Lab Academy Masters program. So you will know if you are on that program. We will have been in touch, and you'll either be working through the employability things this semester or starting in January. Unfortunately, it is a closed program at the minute. Sometimes we have some projects that are unmatched at the end that I can offer out, but that's on a very ad hoc basis. So yeah, it's currently a closed program on the student side of things. In terms of a list of projects that have been done, we don't have a kind of exhaustive list. It's an internal program in that sense, but we do have some case studies. There are lots of videos on our website and YouTube talking about placements and kind of what makes for a good placement. But generally, as I was saying earlier, we tend to work with you and the data that you have and what you would like to do with it, and from that kind of scope out a project. So yeah, Mary, if you would like to have a chat, please do get in touch with, I think it's partners@thedatalab.com, and we'll be happy to have a call and kind of discuss the type of things that might be possible. So yeah, we've got a question from Daniel for Erica and Alvaro. What do you look for when assessing a placement application? Is there anything in particular which helps someone stand out? I don't know who wants to jump in.
Can jump in if you want. I think that is I touched before. For me, one of the main things is the motivation. And I think that is something that Mark already mentioned, that to know, let's say, about the project description, about the topic of the project, and you come with a clear idea on what is the topic of the project, and you have done and your research beforehand, that will help. And then the attitude on solving or the challenges. I think those are the key things. The technical side of things, I think that they're required to have at least the minimum technical skills to be able to do the problem, but it's not like I will look for someone that is outstanding on the technical side of things. I think that it has a much more important, the motivation and the attitude in this case for me when I'm assessing for a student for a placement.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think, yeah, particularly on that point that you raised about don't feel like you have to have had decades of experience in a professional setting in order to perform well at interview, because that's not what's being tested. So I think just, yeah, if you've got good motivation, if you've read the description properly, if you've written a cover letter that is specific to that project as well, I think that makes you stand out a little bit more. And just, yeah, think of all the other examples that you can use if you don't have decades of experience, which you're unlikely to. There's lots of transferable skills that you would have picked up that you might want to use in any interview questions. But yeah, I think the interviews sounds like both of our organisations take quite a relaxed approach to them. So I wouldn't feel too nervous about them going into them. Just try and be yourself, which I know is easier said than done, and just use the experiences that you do have. And yeah, make that cover letter like specific to the project. I think that's probably a good tip to take away.
Yeah, definitely. Tailoring your application to the project is definitely key.
I don't think it has to be that long either. Like if you're daunted by the prospect of having to write like a long cover letter for every application, I'd say like short is also okay if it's more specific and if it reads well. Don't feel put off by having to write pages and pages. Keep it short and brief and specific to the project.
Yeah, great. That's a really good tip there. And then a question for all from Rebecca. What is the most valuable thing about being involved in the program? Should we come to Mark? We'll start with you.
I think the most valuable thing is getting experience, because like I said, I had experience previously in the scientific sector, but I had no experience in finance or banking. So getting the chance to get some real world experience is, invaluable.
Amazing. Yeah. Oliver, what would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. The experience is fantastic. I mean, not only was the placement able to help me finish my thesis, which was a huge accomplishment for me, but also, yeah, it's an additional experience to have on the CV and raise your employability, really.
Yeah, great. I think it is a really good opportunity for our students to have a project in a real world setting and that professional experience in data to then take forward for further applications once they finish their masters. So I think, yeah, that's a really important point. Alvaro, what would you say the most valuable thing about the program?
For me, I think that is the learning opportunity that I touched before. So it's the chance of learning something new through the project and through the work from someone that has that, let's say, clear view. Or so I think that for me is the most important thing, let's say, or the highlight on why I have been involved on co-supervising the students over many years, the learnings that I have been able to get through all the projects.
That's really great to hear, because, you know, we really push it as a learning opportunity for our students. So it's great to hear that it's a learning opportunity for our host organizations as well. So that's really great. And then, yeah, Erica, what would you say?
Yeah, I'd say as the Scottish Government, I almost feel like there's a bit of a duty there to support students who are studying in Scotland with the experience in government, if that makes sense. So I think it's important to have like as many doors open as possible to gain experience in the civil service and in the Scottish Government. So I'd say that's like one of the values I see in this scheme, in that it can like bridge that gap between the Scottish Government and universities. And yeah, to echo earlier points, it's like the learning opportunity that it provides. It's the fresh perspective and the new face on the team.
Amazing. Great. Well, I think, yeah, I think you're totally right. Bridging that gap between students and universities and kind of research that's going on in Scottish Government or private or third sector organisations is a really great part of the programme. Well, so that brings us up to 1. So we'll wrap up there. Please do get in touch if you're thinking about hosting a placement. We're happy to have a chat, as I say, around scoping, etc. And students, hopefully you've picked up lots of top tips for applications. We'll be in touch with more information about how that works, but it will all be kicking off in January. So yeah, thank you to our panel. And yeah, hopefully you've all found it really informative. So I hope you have a good afternoon. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.